while you're getting organized. Okay, thank you everybody for coming, both on Zoom and in the room. I always like to say that because it rhymes. First of all, our learning tonight, in addition to being the Zichra Shel Avigail Malka Bat Harav Moshe, I would like it to be for the zchut of the rescuing of the Chatufim and okay. So the refuah for the ptsuim and the hatzlacha of the chayalim. What? Oh, for her you won't need a mic, and I'm just doing the introduction, so we're good. Most of us knew Rabbanit Dr. Avigail Rock, Zichrona Levracha, and we miss her dearly. For those who didn't know her, Avigail was a sought-after lecturer in Tanakh and a beloved and admired teacher to hundreds of students in Beit Shemesh and beyond. I was at the Herzog Yimei Yun this week, and her name came up numerous times. She was at the forefront of advanced Torah learning for women, both through her Torah and her academic achievements, and through her ability to touch the hearts of her students and elevate their spiritual and Torah growth. And it helped that she had a great sense of humor. I would like to thank her family for sponsoring this evening, and I would like to also thank her many friends and students who also contributed to this evening, and it's very much appreciated, and it should be Le'ilui Nishmata. Before I introduce Rabbanit Miriam Reisler or Reisler? Reisler. Okay, got it right. I just want to announce that Sunday morning is our annual Tisha B'Av program, unless we're celebrating, but it's at Netzach, and the information is on the website. And our program for next year is already out. There are a couple of copies here if anyone wants. And Rabbanit Miriam Reisler is the Rosh Midrasha of Midrashet Akikim, and has been teaching Torah for a very long time. In Beit Shemesh, she was at Noga, and in Matan Beit Shemesh. As a matter of fact, I think you subbed for Abigail when she was sick. You taught us Eov. Yes, Eov. It was awesome. What? No, I know it's weird to call Eov awesome, but it was powerful. Is that better? We're very happy to have her here tonight.
Thank you everybody for being here in memory of Avigail. I want to start with a story that first is not exactly going to be about Avigail, but it will certainly circle back to her. I am the head of Midrashat Tichonit Afikim, which is a school for girls 9th through 12th grade. We now have 40 students. They learn in one classroom, and they are very sweet, very, very, very delightful girls who really care about Torah and Yirat Shamayim. And this year ended, as everybody knows, with a bang. The school year for high schools ended on June 20th. And on June 20th, we were still in the middle of a 12-day war. And the June 19th, I gave out report cards on Zoom, and on June that was Thursday, and then there was Shabbos, and then on Sunday there were a whole bunch of girls who had a bagrut in history, so that took most of the morning and the afternoon, and then the girls and I had a meeting that night, Sunday night, and the topic of the meeting was Am Yisrael is in the middle of a war, and it doesn't matter that the school year has just ended because Am Yisrael needs our Torah and Am Yisrael needs our tefillot. So under no circumstances can the school year be over, or can the Beit Midrash be over? And they tried to figure out, what that would look like and what should happen. And what was decided was that they should that we should start learning Tehillim. We had no idea at that point how long this war was going to go on. And the girls said, you know, it's very hard during vacation and especially under the circumstances to like really like pull yourself out of bed in the morning. So if I have like a 9:15 or a 9:30 shear, then I'll get out of bed and be davened and, you know, and we'll have a shear and then I'll be ready to go at 10 and I will have made, you know, Zman Tefillah and Zman Kriyat Shema, and like that's much better. Now, obviously that isn't 40 girls, right? We have 40 girls and many of them are even normal, and and so not everybody was looking for this opportunity, but everybody is actually very feels very pleased, is like, you know, feels very fortunate to be part of an institution where that's the kind of thing that happens. So we started the very next morning. It was decided at 10 p.m. on Sunday night. At 9:15 a.m. on Monday morning, we started learning Tehillim Perek Aleph. And so what I told them was, we're going to be learning Tehillim. At some point, at some point the war ended. I was like, you know what, we're going to do this until Tisha B'Av. And what we do is we learn Sunday to Thursday, and then on Friday I send review questions, in addition to the Parsha sheet and the Divrei Chassidut that they've asked for. And then we start, you know, and then we continue the following week. So we've been learning approximately 5 or 6 Pirkei Tehillim a week since then. In the meantime, this year was delayed. And this was the day that we figured out that, right, so tomorrow is my last shear because it's Thursday before Tisha B'Av. And tomorrow I will be teaching Tehillim Perek Lamed. It means more Shiur Chanukat Habayit LeDavid. And so I was in touch with Devora, who was my student in Noga for 4 years. And I said to her, I wrote to her, I said, Devora, wasn't this, what was, by any chance, was Tehillim Perek Lamed the perek that you read at your mother's hesped? Because that's what I remember. Sometimes people's memories get messed up, but I think that that's the perek that you read. And she said, yes, indeed, that was the perek that I read at the hesped. And then she sent me a link to the hesped. And I'm feeling like this shiur was delayed until I was up to Tehillim Perek Lamed, which was apparently the Perek Tehillim that Avigail had given a shiur about, and Devora said that it was such a beautiful shiur and it was so meaningful to her, and that when there would be a Seudat Hodaya, that her mother had planned on saying this Perek Tehillim. Unfortunately, that Seudat Hodaya did not happen, but I sort of feel like there was a confluence here of events that was about a real Ahavat Torah and Yirat Shamayim that really was appropriate to who Avigail was and what she was for so many people. And it's so clear to me that if she were here today, that she wouldn't have been invited once, but twice and 3 times and more, to have given shiurim to my students who are so thirsty for a Torah like the Torah that she taught. And in fact, this past year during Seder Pash, at some point they were reading through chapters in her book on Parshanei HaTorah. And so it's like these would be girls that she would have been so thankful and so happy to have met and to have taught. And so I am so that's what we're starting with. Okay, Tehillim Perek Lamed. I'm not going to try to teach Tehillim Perek Lamed, which apparently Avigail had a share about, and I didn't have the zchut to hear. But I want to talk about the intersection between limud, learning Torah, and prayer, and tefillah, because in our Beit Mid, where do you learn the most? You learn the most when you teach people, and then they ask you questions. And so the questions that there are all kinds of questions that I've been asked, and maybe one of the most popular questions that I've been asked in this time period that I've been teaching Tehillim Aleph Ad Lamed is, David HaMelech has a lot of enemies, and he's always in trouble, and he's always asking for help. And like, do we need all these prakim, and what's different about them, and what's supposed to happen to us when we say a perek Tehillim? That like, and then what? Um, so um, so so I want to talk about limud and tefillah, and part of what I want to talk about in limud and tefillah is I think that we would all say like, well, if you've learned perek Tehillim, then when you daven, it will just be that much more meaningful. And there's definitively truth to that. But I want to actually step back from the truth there and talk about a different problem. And the different problem is that limud is kind of this intellectual experience. It's about, I understood, that was so clever, I got it. And tefillah is about something else. It's about like being humble and standing before your creator. And it's about being small, and it's not necessarily about understanding. In a lot of cases, it's about not understanding. It's the what you come to tefillah with is not the same thing that you come to limud with, and herein lies the problem, that even if I teach a lot of Pirkei Tehillim, it could be that we'll just all keep on davening exactly the way we davened before we started learning these Pirkei Tehillim, and that would be very sad, but I understand why that would happen and how that could happen. And I want to try to talk a little bit about a perek. I'm going to use a perek Tehillim, but I want to talk a little bit about this problem, and I want to talk a little bit about what the various parshanim commentators do to address this problem, sort of in their own way, right? They don't say, oh, when you get to davening, you better do this. But there are little clues in their parshanut, which are there to help us figure out how to make this more of our tefillah. So I want to start a little bit just with a Sefer Musar that I really like, just to like put the problem more squarely on the table. In the words of Rav Shimshon Pinkus, he was the Haredi rabbi of Ofakim, and he was pretty Haredi from what I understand. And he wrote an amazing book called Sha'arim B'Tfilah, which has a lot of really incredible analogies, and I recommend learning it yourself. I was going through, oh, this is so good, we should do this. This is so good, we should. But okay, so I took like two little pieces because to give a little bit of a sense, and it really was just to give a little bit of sense of the problems that we have dealing with limud and tefillah. So he's what he's trying to push is tefillah. It's called Sha'arim B'Tfilah. It's about how to have meaningful davening. And he says the following. He says, ישנה נקודה חשובה שהרבה טועים בה. רבים חושבים שהעלייה בתפילה הוא בעיקר על ידי עלייה בגדלות האדם. People think that the way to rise up in their abilities in tefillah, or their level of tefillah, is that you get to be a more chashuv person, and so your tefillah goes up together with that. B'taharat halev, that actually sounds even better. Purity of heart, kedusha, v'kiruv el hakadosh baruch hu. Now, all those things sound really true, right? In other words, if you had all those things, then wouldn't your tefillah be so much better? Aval ha'emet hu, היא דוודאי כאשר מתעסקין במדרגות גבוהות ורמות, אלה הם היסודות המעכבים לגדלות אמיתית. It is true that when you really get to like a very high level, so it's true that you need all those things. אבל כאשר אנו בערכנו עוסקים בעלייה בתפילה, when we're trying to, in our own way, improve our תפילה, הכוונה היא לקנות אומנות התפילה, to be better daveners. וקניית אומנות התפילה היא רק על ידי הקדשת זמן והתמדה, and you have to do it by giving it time, over time, like not just giving it one-time deal, but like doing it on a regular basis. הרגל ועבודה קשה ומעשית, כמו, and then he says, Kimo, it is not. It is kimo bilimud Torah. It's not limud, right? Kimo bilimud Torah. Da'af al pi de madrigot Torah, hem madrigot shel elionut amitit. Even though the Torah, learning Torah is elionut amitit is a very high level. Aval haderech la'alot b'sulam ha'aliyah b'Torah le'erkenu. Right. So how do you get there? You don't get there by being an Adam Gadol. It's how do you do it? Al yidei amal v'yigia, belimud harbe dapei gemara, shmiat harbe svarot yesharot, shlilat svarot akumot, ad shekonim darkei halimud, umitraglim b'darkei hasvara shel הגמרא והראשונים, כמו כל אמנות שנקנית על ידי ניסיון והרגל והדרכה ישרה של מומחים. How do you get better at learning Torah? A lot of hard work. So what is he going to say? So guess what? Ken hu b'Torah, v'chen hu b'tfilah. Okay, in other words, it's a different category. It's like what you know about limud. Now you have to think about putting in time and effort to tfilah. So, וצריך לעמול קשות בזמנים רבים, עד שדרכי התפילה חודרים לכוחות האדם, ונעשים פשוטים אצלו וחלק ממנו. You have to do it until it's part of you. It's like what he's trying to say is, it's not the same work. It's different work. You know from Limud Torah that you have to put in work in order to get there, but it's different work to get there with tefillah. And then I skipped a number of things. Okay, we skipped for a lot of Gimel, and now we're in Daled. He says, העצה העיקרית, איך לעלות במדרגות התפילה ולהשיג בה הכוונה הראויה, היא לקבוע זמנים לעבודת התפילה מחוץ לזמני התפילה עצמם. בזמן התפילה צריך להתפלל היטב. Like he's saying, if you want to grow in tefillah, then you need to spend time working on it, not during tefillah. Because during tefillah, you need to be davening. But שזה עצמו צריך יגיעה ועבודה רבה. ואין זה הזמן להוסיף כוח וכישרון וטהרת הלב בתפילה. את זה צריך לעשות בזמן אחר על ידי לימוד בספרים המעוררים לנקיות הלב בתפילה והבנת ענייניה. He's talking about what do you have to do? You have to spend time worrying about what's in your heart. He didn't say, and for this you need to spend a lot of time working with all the Pirkei Tehillim and what they mean. Okay, that's not what he said. He says you need to spend time thinking about who you are. It's about who you are and what's in your heart. And that's really like the ikar of tefillah, of the work that you need to do, not during tefillah. Okay, during tefillah, you need to be in that experience. But outside of tefillah, you need to spend time every day. It could be 10 minutes working on your taharat halev. And I think that even though he says v'inyaneh, I'm not sure that what he's talking about is to know the words of the tefillah. It's not clear to me that that's what he means. He's talking about to know the taharat halev, to know deep inside who you are and what you are and how you're coming to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the next paragraph it was just Yetzer Hara, and it's going to be related to what we're going to say about the Perek Tehillim that we're going to actually talk about, but it's actually not even related to this first point, but it's just hard. It was just too hard. So he says, V'hinei matzinu etzel Avraham Avinu, that Avraham Avinu, sheyeshna tefillah shehi kmo milchama. What is tefillah like? It's a milchama. ובמלחמה הרי פשוט לכל, everybody understands, שעיקר ההצלחה תלויה בהכנה הקודמת לה. You have to be ready to fight a war. You can't go to a war not being prepared. It's all about being prepared. ולא ייתכן לגשת למלחמה, ורק אז בשעת מעשה, right? לתכנן את אופני הלחימה ולחדד את החרבות. You can't sharpen your swords when you're already in the middle of the battle. That's not the time for it. You got to sharpen the sword and clean your gun before you go to battle. Shaharei ben kach uven kach yitgaber haoyev. If you're in the middle of like cleaning your gun and doing tapash on your tank while they are attacking, it's not good. So וכן הוא בתפילה, אם ישתדל רק בשעות מעשה לעורר את הלב And if it's only during tefillah that you're like, okay, now I'm going to have kavanah, now I'm going to do it. אז בין כך ובין כך המחשבה משוטטת והתפילה אינה כדבעי. Your thoughts start wandering and your tefillah is not what you want it to be. ונמצא הפסיד תפילתו. And then it again goes the way that tefillah goes. Okay, so those were divrei idud, those are, encouraging words about why it's important to spend time working on tefillah. I'll even say something that's like, I teach girls, so I don't generally teach a mixed audience, and here I'll say something that I'll say that's more for women. But women do not have, according to most poskim, chiyuv of 3 tefillot a day. And not only that, there's even the Magen Avraham, who was a melamed zchut, that the women who never daven, not shachris, not mincha, not arvit, but they would wake up in the morning and they would say Hashevach bakasha v'odaya, and they were yotzot yedei chova for the mitzvah of tefillah, even though they were not using a siddur for many, many years. And the reason that I'm mentioning that is because there are years in women's lives that trying to make time to daven shachris and mincha is like, at best, it's a losing battle, okay? And at worst, it's just not something that happens. But maybe what you would want to say is, if I took some of the things that Sharim B'Tfilah is saying, if I took these things to heart, then maybe what I would suggest to my young students is, there are times when the quality is going to be more important than the quantity. And if you have time, if you only have time to say one tefillah, then it might be that, you only have time to mail in one tefillah. There is that possibility. And you're yotzei yedei chova. But it might be that your lesser chiyuv creates a little bit of a space where you could say, instead of spending 15 minutes on shacharit, I'll spend 8 minutes on le'orer et halev and 7 minutes on mincha, with birkot shachar and birkot Torah and kriyat, right? In other words, okay. But these are the kinds of things that again, it's right, because I teach girls, so it's easier for me to say there's room here. There's room here, right? And the men might say, listen, we're already spending between an hour and a half and 2 hours a day on getting chakras, davening chakras, it's already a lot of time. I don't necessarily have more time. He's trying to encourage everybody to have more time. It might be that women have a little bit more time if they're willing to fudge things. So here's the thing. He says it's like Talmud Torah, but it's not Talmud Torah. It's not the same thing. And what I want to talk about is what happens when we learn a Perek Tehillim, and when does it stay Talmud Torah, and when does it become Tefillah, and which Parshanim are, how the Parshanim, each in their own way, help us make it into a Tefillah. And some of them are a little more explicit, and some of them are a little less explicit, and then you got to figure it out. Okay, so we're going to do Tehillim Perek Kavav, which is a very odd choice. Okay, it's a perek that presumably most people aren't familiar with. I will say that in lieu of the fact that this is also for a refuah shlema for our chayalim and for their hatzlacha on the battlefield, and we'll be addressing that more later on, but I would say that there are so many times that that a link goes out that we're saying Tehillim for somebody, and then you get a random perek of Tehillim, and sometimes it's a perek and sometimes it's a perek that you don't know. So I'm going to make my contribution to this perek that is potentially less known. So Tehillim Perek Kavav is LeDavid. Shafteni Hashem, ki ani betumi halachti, ubahashem ratachti, lo emad. I walked bitom. With tmimut lev. I put my trust in Hashem. I won't fall. It's like it's like to fall off a cliff. Limod. B'chaneni Hashem v'naseni. You should test me. Now we usually ask that Hashem not test us, so we'll get back to that soon. Tzarfach hilyotai v'libi. And it's not clear if it should be tzufa or tzarfa. We read it tzarfa, but it sounds like it's asking that you should do something to my klayot and to my kidneys and to my heart. Kidneys are a symbolic organ in Tanakh, to make them cleaner, more pure. Because your chesed is what I see, and I walk with your emet. Kind of like Noach is et Elokim hitalech Noach, and so you have an emet that I walk with. Lo yashavti mitei shav, so I haven't sat with any people who are mitei shav, who are people of shav, of nothing. V'im na'alamim lo avo, people who are hiding things. I won't be with them. Saneti kahal mereim. I dislike, I hate people who are get together to do evil, to do bad. Vim rishaim lo eshev. I won't sit with people who are rishaim. I've had a lot of names for the bad people who we're not going to sit with. They're the Matei Shav, they're the Na'alamim, they're the Kal Mereim, they're the Rishaim. Erchatz b'nikayon kapai. I'm going to wash. I'm going to be clean. My hands will be clean. And then v'asovavat mizbachacha Hashem. And then I will go around your mizbach. Lashmiya b'kol todah. The Parshanim mostly say that's lashmiya, in order to that I should say, I should let other people hear my kol todah, my words of todah, of thanks, ulesaper kol niflaotecha, and to say all of your niflaot. Hashem ahavti ma'on beitecha u'makom mishkan kvodecha. Hashem, I love your ma'on beitecha u'makom mishkan kvodecha. I hear your pages turning, but just take a look at Psukim Hey and Chet, that there was a saneti kahal mereim in pasuk Hey and pasuk Chet. It's Hashem ahavti ma'on kodecha. There's it's what I dislike and what I like. We're up to pasuk Tet. It's a short parak Tehillim, so just bear with me. But al te'asof im chataim nafshi v'im anshei damim chayai. I want to not perish with chataim. Chataim is another word for chotim. Bruria said it's yitamu chataim min haaretz, that the sins should perish from the earth, and not the chotim, not the people who sin. Okay, but the chataim here are in reference to the people. Ve'im anshei damim chayai. Don't have me perish, have my life perish with anshei damim. Asher b'yedehem zima. V'yaminam mele'ah shochad. They have in their hands all these bad, evil plans, and they've got shochad in their hands. They've got bribery in their hands, and that is underlined in the same way that I had written b'nikayon kapai. He has nikayon kapai, and he is saying that there are these people who very much do not have nikayon kapaim. V'ani betumi elech. I'm going to go with my tmimut. I'm going to walk with my tmimut. Hashem says to Abraham, and to me elech, and we had that at the beginning of this parak as well. So we started with Bitumi halakti. He says he's going to continue doing that. Raglai amda b'mishor b'makelim avarech Hashem. And so my feet are going to stand on firm ground. When do you, in the first pasuk, he sort of fell off a cliff. So when do you fall? When the ground is not steady, it's not flat. And so we started with, I'm not going to fall. And now he's saying, I'm going to be on steady ground. Okay, the couple of things that I pointed out just now, saneti ahavti, the steady ground and the not falling, the nikyon kapai versus the people whose hands are dirty with dirty money. Those comparisons are what you do when you have poetry, right? You look at what words are being used and you start seeing, oh, the beginning and the end. How does the beginning and the end compare to one another? How do they how are they related? You start trying to figure out what in fact the parak is talking about by trying to use the words and the words that repeat themselves. Now, I as I had said earlier, a lot of prakim and Tehillim sound the same. And, you have somebody who is being pursued by his enemies and he needs to be saved, and Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to come and save him. And so when my students ask, well, why is it like always the same stuff? So one of the answers that I gave them was, I want you to think about how many love songs you know that are on the radio or something. I don't know if there's a radio anymore, but wherever it is, I wonder, they're all saying the same thing. So what makes them different? And if you go into a bakery, and there are a lot of breads, or there are a lot of danishes, and this one, like, the chocolate is sort of on top, and this one, the chocolate is in the middle, and right. And so what's the difference? So you need to sort of like turn it over, right? Like it's like having a candy and you turn it over in your mouth to savor it. So you got to try to figure out like why this candy is this candy and not the other candy. And to try to like enjoy and appreciate what this candy is giving you. And for that, we're going to make use of our parshanim, who will help give us little clues to what it is might be going on here, and hopefully we'll get back to tefillah. So I brought only selected pieces of what the parshanim said as a way of trying to show little places where the parshanim add more texture to each of these prakim. So for example, it says, Shafteni Hashem, that's how we started off. And Rashi says, Ubamakom acher hu omer, al tavo b'mishpat. So when there's another parak Tehillim much later on where he says, you know what, I don't want to be judged. So that's kind of funny because you just asked to be judged. So what does Rashi say based on Divrei Chazal? He says, Amar David says, Ksha'ata dan et harishaim shafteni, when you're looking at the rishaim, so then I'm willing to stand there because I look good compared to them. Ki lefi harishaim ani tzadik, uksha'ata dan et tzadikim, when it's tzadikim, then less. So what is he saying? He's saying this is a parak Tehillim when you think that the people you're talking about are definitively less good than you. Okay? When you're not completely sure of yourself, and within that, what is implied is, I made mistakes. I am not perfect. Okay, shafteni. Okay, I'm gonna skip to the Radak. I'm sorry, I'm gonna work with the two of them. I'm gonna skip to the Radak. The Radak on the next pasuk says, "Va'amar." He says, "Kilyotai v'libi," my kidneys and my heart. I said that those were organs that are talked about in Mikra. And the Radak says about the kilyotai, "Kama yoatzot." They give advice. Okay, that's the way they were understood in a Mikra text. V'amar libi ki hu mevin ubal machshavot. And they sort of, I think that the way we talk today about like the heart and the mind, that's the way they talked about the klayot and the lev, the klayot were like, they had a lot of like feeling, and the heart had a lot of thoughts. Okay, so swap it in there. V'katav tzrufa, and the reason that it says tzrufa, there was a kriuk ktiv there. Al kol machshava u'machshava shehi below beli shum sig. I could read it siag. Siag is like something that it's something that you limit, but Yeshayahu talks about sigim, the things that made money dirty, that were in the money, kaspech sigim. Okay, so there's this I want every single thought to go through that process of being like put through the burner so that it's like perfectly pure. V'kfi machshavotai shafteni. And how do I want to be judged? On my machshavot. Because sometimes I didn't do the right thing. I am always trying to do the right thing. The Radak says it's not it's not faced with the tzaddikim, it's faced with it's that I want you to judge my heart. My heart is pure. In that parak, it's it's about it's about my actions, and therefore he says al tavo b'mishpat tavadecha. So we start this parak and we say, okay, so this parak is about somebody who says the guys out there, they're really bad, and sometimes I'm not perfect, but there's a lot of purity in my heart, and Kadosh Baruch Hu knows about that purity. When I read this parak Tehillim, I'm trying to be to connect with that purity. And one of the things that I'll tell you about being in the world of education today, which is a change even since when I started, let alone since when my father, who I'm the zchut was here today, when he started. But there's a lot more internal struggles that kids are coming to the table with, or at least we, the educators, know about it more. Maybe it was always there and we just didn't know, but they're coming with a lot of baggage. And one of the things that you need to convince them of is your machshavot, your insides, your pnim, is tahor. It's like, it's just good. There's a lot of good. It's true that you're having trouble with coming late to class. It's true that you might not have done this kibud horim thing the way you wanted. It's true that there are all kinds of things that people get wrong in their life. It's true, but you're not a bad person. There's a thing called tmimut lev, and it's a good thing, and you can daven with tmimut lev, and that's what Rashi and Radak, if we combine them, are trying to tell us. This is a parak that you can start. Or I'm going to change the tune shortly, but this is what they're trying to say. I want to talk about one more thing with Rashi and Radak, about the nikayon kapal, the cleanliness of my hands. Okay, I'm clean. I'm coming to the table clean. And what does Rashi say? Rashi says, actually, first let's read Radak, because as Avigail pointed out in her book, Radak is easy to understand, and therefore maybe there aren't so many super commentaries on the Radak, because he's easy to understand. So he's going to say what's obvious. Okay, so the Radak says, that I am going to first wash my hands, and then I'm going to go around your mizbach. First, I'm going to do that. Then I'll walk around your mizbach. Lakriv shamolatai, and then I'll bring my korbanot. Ki lo kirishaim shemeviim olot bidehem videhem damim aleu. Not like the rishaim that they are doing all kinds of terrible things, even shvichut damim. But also Yeshayahu talks about a lot of hypocrisy. Whether you think that you bring korban and then you get a free pass for gezel and taking advantage of people. And I'm not like them. I don't do those things. When I come to Beit Hashem, I've gone through a tshuva process, and I know that I'm not holding in my hands. If I did something wrong, I'm sorry about it, and then I've done tshuva. I've added in words to the Radak, but if we think that he maybe did something wrong, and he's saying, I come to Beit HaMikdash and I am b'nikayon kapai, so something must have happened in the middle that made that possible. Okay, so that's the way the Radak explains it, and that's a very good, simple explanation. Rashi says something that's really like almost mind-boggling. Rashi says, she'en gezel b'mitzvot she'ani mekayem, lulav hagazul pasul. Okay, I have to give a little bit of background on the sugya about lulav hagazul, but he says, she'en gezel b'mitzvot she'ani mekayem, that when I come to do a mitzvah, the mitzvah that I come to do is not tainted. And if you're the king and you are trying to do the right thing, sometimes things are hard. Things are right, and sometimes with the best of intentions, things don't always end up being clean and pure. That's not like, it doesn't always work. Now he's talking specifically about a sugya. He's talking about lulav gazul, and a stolen lulav is pasul. And specifically, Nagid Rav Soloveitchik talks about the Torat Brisk is that that the gezel makes a mitzvah puzzle when it has to do with avodat Hashem. Like when there's a mizbeach involved, it's going to be a problem. And they talk about, there's a talk about how lulav, which is sort of like forward, backward, whatever, that's tnufa. That's what they used to do with minachot. It's exactly the same behavior. And so lulav is a kind of hakrava, it's some kind of korban. And so the fact that the nikayon kapai and the mizbeach appeared in the same pasuk, so Rashi then combined it and said, when I do mitzvot, that my mitzvot are not tainted with gezel, even if sometimes maybe things can get confusing. So Rashi and Radak, when you read them, you're supposed to not just say, oh, yeah. You're supposed to say, oh, before I come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I need to do tshuva. Or when I'm doing things that are vivchinat avodat Hashem, mitzvot, and again, mitzvot for a king are all kinds of things. I need to make sure that I think 20 times that I did it really like with clean hands, with really clean hands. So that's Rashi and Radak. Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. So what I'm suggesting here, I just want to make clear, what I'm suggesting here is that Rashi and Radak are telling you a little bit what to think about when you read this perek, when you learn this perek. But maybe those are things that you would think about when you daven. You might say like, oh, I'm saying this perek because they're bad people and I'm really okay and I've done tshuva, or I'm going to do tshuva, or right, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to make sure that I don't fall. Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch has a perush on Sefer Tehillim, and I brought something from a different pasuk so that you could see it. And he wrote it in German, and this is the translation, so I don't really know what it's like in German. But the first thing that you notice is that it's longer, okay? And it's very long, but what I wanna, this is an introduction to the next thing, which is gonna be even a little bit longer, okay? But Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch uses these like very like big words, or like very, high vocabulary, again in translation, but let's feel it. Let's like taste this candy. Okay, he's talking about the pasuk, pasuk dalid, lo yashavti mitei shav v'im na'alamim lo avo. He's saying shav is the opposite of amitecha, which I actually hadn't pointed out. Okay, that I want your emet, and the people who are shav want want the opposite, that mentioned in verse 3, and denotes that which is vain and transitory as regards both value and permanence. Mitei are people who have no worth at all for the present and are of value only insofar as they serve as a transition to coming generations that may be superior to them. Mitei shav are those who have no conception of the deeper meaning of life, have room in their minds only for vain and transitory things. It is impossible to avoid contact with such people, but, and here I want to point out what he does, and Rav Shimshon Hirsch does this with many, many psukim in Sefer Tehillim. It ends with a quote, and the quote is kind of like putting in your mouth what he thinks you're saying. Like, in other words, he doesn't give you a perush, but he's telling you these are the words you're saying. He gives you a quote. Here's the quote. I have never sat down with them. I have not ever intentionally dwelt in their company. I have always avoided the company of na'alamim, men who do not fear God, but who do dread men, and therefore find it necessary to dissemble their true nature and character from the eyes of other persons, end quote. Okay, that makes it like very personal, right? You read it and you're right. It's about I never. So right now, it's true. That's the way the pasuk is. Lo yashavti, right? But there's something about how he describes it and the words that make it like it makes it there's more expression there that maybe makes it a little bit more tefillati. And I'm going to say that in teaching Tehillim for the last 29 prakim, I have found that there are some parshanim who give you the tefillah more on a silver platter. And this is an example. This is just like a little example of how you get something that's a little more prayerful in the parshanut itself, that you don't have to do the work, but that the parshan does some of the work for you, gives you the how to say it. So again, I'm teaching, and there's this fabulous site, Ala Torah. And Ala Torah, I found for the first time, I had never used this book before. I found this book, Amar HaGaon, which is Rav Ovadia Sforno's students. It was written by him. It's shiurim, classes that Rav Ovadia Sforno gave. And it's on Sefer Tehillim, and there are astounding things in Shiurei Harav Ovadia Sforno. And this is going to bring us to this shiur being also for our chayalim, because he has an entirely different take on what this perek is about. And it, I think for me, helps it be something that we maybe would very much want to daven for today, this week, yesterday, last month. לדוד שפטני השם כי אני וגומר, אמר הגאון, כי המזמור הזה עשאו דוד בעת צאת למלחמה. He said this when he was going to war. Really? Where was the war? I missed it entirely. I had no idea there was a war. I mean, they were bad guys, but like I didn't know that there was a war. כמתנצל להשם שהוא הולך בניקיון כפיים ובלב תמים להילחם. I think the word מתנצל here means like explaining. כי התכלית האמיתי של ניצחון ישראל, listen carefully, the purpose of Am Yisrael winning a war, הוא כדי להכניס אומות תחת כנפי השכינה, לקרוא כולם בשם השם, ותכלית זולתו אינו מכוון הקל יתברך. The purpose that we go to war is to fight a justified war, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be Hashem Melech al kol haaretz. That's why we fight wars. Any other purpose is not why we fight a war. He says about David HaMelech, he says in the year 1200, he says about David HaMelech, you know, in before Bayei Rishon, okay? He says, okay, Va'amar imken shafteni Hashem ki ani betumi halachti. I went tamid adena. Amar ze ki mitnatzel al chataav shechata lefa'amim. I'm sorry about the sins that sometimes I sinned. Ki lo lehachisu bezadon chata ki betumo. I didn't do it on purpose. Nu b'Hashem patachti. Tamid. I always was boteach b'Hashem v'lachen dinhu, and therefore it's the din shelo V'Shem ad b'milchamotai, and I underlined like a lot of the milchamot here. Okay, I'm not that I won't fail in my wars. V'od amar b'chaneni Hashem v'naseni b'kol pe'ulotai she'ef'al b'milchama. So the b'chaneni isn't test me. It's more help me. ואתה גם כן, שרפה כליותיי וליבי, אם אנוכי הולך להילחם לתכלית אחר, זולת התכלית האמיתי ומה בליבי. He says, and if there's something in my heart, if I am going to war for a purpose which is not the right purpose, not to fight the most justified war for Am Yisrael and for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if I'm not doing that, then make my heart more pure. ועוד כי חסדך לנגד עיניי, שאני בוטח בחסדך, שהוא ייתן לי גבורה. Why do I need your chesed? Because I need the strength to fight this war. נגד אויביי, התהלכתי בעמיתך, ועוד שאני הולך לעשות בהם משפט. I want there to be משפט. ואם תאמר, פסוק ד', אם ליבי שלם ותמים, מה לי להביא איתי למלחמה? אנשים ריקים ופוחזים. דוד המלך had all these אנשים ריקים ופוחזים איתו, who went with him, certainly when he was fighting Shaul, okay? And so וחטאים להשם מאוד, אמר דוד להתנצל על עצמו, היא לא יכירם ולא בזדון עושה זאת. He's like, I didn't go and say like, if you're a criminal, then come here, like please apply for this job. That was not my purpose. לא ישבתי מתי שווא, שם עמי הארץ, ואם נעלמים לא אבוא, שם החנפים, אחד בפה ואחד בלב. He's like, there are people, they tell you this, they really mean that, right? שנאתי קהל מרעים, שהם היוצאים למלחמה כדי להרע. What are מרעים? They're people who go to war in order to destroy, in order to do bad, in order to be ra. But he's like, that's not the point. ולא לתכלית אחר. אם רשעים לא יישב, שם בעלי עבירות, כל אלה אמר דוד שהוא אינו מכיר בהם. That's not my thing. השם יראה ללבב, האדם יראה לעיניים. אבל אני אמר David says, אני יודע בעצמי שקודם שאצא, ארחץ בניקיון כפיי, לסובבת מזבחך השם, כלומר, יהיה שמחה, ועל דרך שאמרו, הימלך בקונך וצא. You should ask permission. He's like, הסובבת מזבחך Hashem is not necessarily a mizbeach. It's a structure that helps us understand, right? That he's saying, I'm asking of you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to come with me, kedei lashmiya, that's in order I will be able to tell achar kach b'shuvi b'shalom, when I come home safely, b'kol todah u'lesaper kol niflotecha she'asita yimadi b'yom hilachami b'yom krav. Okay, this is like something else, right? This is not what we thought the parak was entirely about. Amar David, tachlit kavanati, linachem ba'oivai. I wanna fight my enemies. And it's because I have Timon Beitecha u'makon mishkan kvodecha. And he says, likatzer. He says, I'm moving to pasuk Yud Bet. He says, ragli amda b'mishor l'she'avar tamid. I always stood on the ground, on level ground. V'chen la'atid b'makelim avarech Hashem. And in the future, I'm going to bless Hashem b'makelim. Ritzono lomar sheb'makelot ha'umot gam ken. Right? Before we had the in the perek, he had said saneti kahal miraim. So he goes back to the makelim, to the group, and he says those bad people, I am going to make sure that acharesh tenutzachna mimeni, when I've won against them, edrosh bahem va'avarech Hashem kedei lachnisem tachat tzilo u'la'avdo shechem echad. I want Hashia bayom hahu yashem echad u'shmo echad. That's what I am planning on doing. That's the war that I want to be fighting. Okay. So now anybody who reads this parak Tehillim after she read Rav Ovadia, it's now about something else, and you could daven for something else. What are you davening for? You're davening that we go b'nikayon kapayim to our wars, that our soldiers should be blessed with Kadosh Baruch Hu's help in all of their endeavors, because we are trying to make Eretz Yisrael and Medinat Yisrael, a safe place for Am Yisrael. And that's something that you do b'nikayon kapayim. It's an amazing thing that they're doing. And they should have bracha v'hatzlacha. And I want you to look at the last 4 words in Shirei Rav Ovadia. Ken yehi ratzon v'nomar amen. How do you end a perush that's essentially a tefillah? You end it with the words of a tefillah, because that's what you understand that you're doing. You understand that what you're doing is you're davening, and it's not about necessarily to understand exactly this word and exactly that word, but it's about to understand that you're standing, that this is a Perek Tehillim, that you're standing in front of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, b'tfilah gedolah, and like this tremendous prayer. So I did want to say one more thing, and I was going to use for this Tehillim Perek Lamed, and that is, and I'm not actually even really going to talk about what it says here because it's Rav Kook, and Rav Kook is very difficult to understand. But in Olat Raya is a book about tefillah. Okay, so if you anybody who has this book at home, you open it up, there's like an introduction to tefillah, and then it just starts going through tefillah, and there are instructions about tefillah, the ta, and then there's tefillot, and then there are a lot of perushim about tefillah. So because Mizmor Shir Chanukat Habayit LeDavid is part of tefillah, so he explains that Perek Tehillim in Olat Raya. So so I actually more want to talk about the how he does it rather than exactly what he says. First of all, if we thought that Rosh Hashanah Hirsch that it was like a little more poetic, so when you get to Rav Kook, it's all about the poetry. I mean, it's also about the tochen, but there's a lot of poetry there, and it's it really is supposed to like elevate the soul. But I want you to look at structurally how it's structured. Aromimcha Hashem ki dilitani. He starts out with the words Aromimcha Hashem ki dilitani, and then he starts explaining, just to give you a sense of כל התרוממות והגבהת הערך האמיתי של האדם אינה חשובה להיות מבוססת כי אם כשהיא באה לתפקידה האמיתי אל הרום העליון של המהות העצמית של האדם בקישורו עם כל ההוויה כולה המתרוממת ברוממותו. So even if you didn't understand anything, and that's likely, there's Aromim Hashem ki dilitani. Wow, there's like a rumemut. There's like, and there are things that are working together, litromem biachad, to like, right? But look at the end. Look at what happens at the end. At the end of the Perush, he says, Aromimcha Hashem ki dilitani. Like he starts it with a dibur amatchil, but then he's like, now that you just read this whole thing about what it means, it's Aromimcha Hashem ki dilitani. Let's say it again. Let's savor those words. Let's savor their beauty. Let's savor what we feel in them now. That's a parshanut that takes us to one next level. And then even more, the next line is Velo simachto oivai. And without reading any of the middle part, he doesn't say at the end of the parshanut, Velo simachto oivai. He goes back to the beginning of the pasuk. He says, Aromim Hashem ki dilitani, velo simachto oivai. Okay, he wants you to chew it over, and then he wants you to say it again. Be with me, say it again. So there are parshanuyot that actually are turning your limud, that are actually using, whether it's Rosh Hashanah Hirsch, his quotations, that was for me like a little bit of a turning it into tefillah. There was the Shiurei Rav Ovadia, which Ken Yiratzon V'nomar Amen. There's Rav Kook in Olat Raya. It's to learn, and then when you're done learning, to say the pasuk again, and to say it like you mean it, to like get it into your heart. And the very last ketta that I brought is a very well-known ketta at this point. When I was growing up, nobody knew this ketta, but now everybody knows this ketta. But Likutei Moharan, Rabbi Nachman, Likutei Moharan, there's a kama and a tanina. There's a first and there's a tanina from the word like tray. Okay, it's the second one. So it's the chelik bet, and he says Gam tov la'asot me'atorah tefillah. It's very good to make your Torah, what you learn, into a tefillah. דהיינו כשלומד או שומע איזה מאמר תורה מצדיק האמת, אזי יעשה מזה תפילה. דהיינו לבקש ולהתחנן לפניו יתברך על כל מה שנאמר שם באותו המאמר. מתי יזכה גם הוא לבוא לכל זה, וכמה הוא רחוק מזה, ויבקש מאיתו יתברך שיזכהו לבוא לכל הנאמר שם באותו המאמר. If you learn something from a sefer, from a gadol, whether it's bichtav, written, or ba'al peh, orally, and it's from somebody who's gadol, then you daven that it should be a ken yehi ratzon. And given that Tehillim is so much a book about tefillah, so learning Tehillim needs to be not only about mining Rashi and mining Radak, but taking those additional steps to putting it to like embedding it in your heart so that it will make your Torot into really meaningful and tefillot with staying power. We should have to be a zchut for Aliyat Neshama, for Avigail, and a zchut for our chayalim and our p'tuim.
There is, Mark, speaking of traveling, there is a reach here in about 5 minutes.
Oh,
And I think, okay, you just come and then back to the middle. Yeah, no, that way. Have a chat here. Thank you.
it's good.
Yes.